So more colorful.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to I Love Myself Fix Presents Coming Into Grace, a new podcast hosted by mother and son duo at Courtney's Fix and at Asha's Fix. Today, we're joined by Eric Bates. How's your day been today?
It's been good. Working from home like a lot of the rest of the country, but it's been good.
And
Looking forward to speaking with you.
oh, that's beautiful. So are we. What is it that you do? Would you mind sharing?
My position title is Special Assistant Inspector General, and I work for the California Office of Inspector General. And in a nutshell, we, by federal case law and statute, we monitor the California Department of Corrections and all of their 30,000 plus officers. And we are there to make sure that they follow their own policies, guidelines in relation to how they treat the inmates, as well as each other. So we handle discipline monitoring regarding discipline against the officers for their activity involving inmates as well as each other. For instance, sexual harassment of each other or whatnot, workplace violence against each other, as well as we have a division that handles the medical side to make sure the inmates are receiving proper medical programming from the department.
Are corrections officers directly separate from the police?
They're considered peace officers. Mm-hmm. They do have peace officer status, but they are different.
Okay.
Yeah, they are different, but they are given peace officer status, though.
Okay.
That's fascinating. And are there many people, many corrections officers, will they have a lifetime? Are many of them in that role for a lifetime?
Oh yeah. Yeah. A lot of them will enter early, like a lot of police agencies will have officers enter in their early 20s and they'll stay there for 20 years and get out at, a lot of them retire around 55 because they have a very good retirement benefit. But yeah, there are a lot of them that are lifers.
Wow, that's fascinating.
And Eric, would you mind sharing with us the place you grew up? Did you grow up in LA?
I grew up in Los Angeles. I grew up in what used to be called South Central, now it's South Los Angeles. Then my parents moved west, spent some years in Ladera Heights, and then went to Culver City High School. So I've been in LA my entire life, which I hear is kind of rare, but yeah, I enjoy it. Except when we have the earthquakes. We have the major earthquakes, then I start to think about living somewhere else, but it's too late now. I'm used to them, I guess.
I'm sorry.
No, I'm going to digress just for a second and go back. Has there been, and I know you've been at home, and that doesn't mean you haven't been at work. Has there been the same or a similar reverberation of energy or impact from the corrections officers as to what is being positioned against, let's say, municipal police officers?
I haven't heard anything yet, but just knowing the landscape, I would imagine they share the same, may share some of the same positions as outside law enforcement, because they consider themselves peace officers, and a lot of them have outside agency experience. So I would not be surprised if they do. I don't know. I haven't heard specifically, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do.
Okay. That's fascinating.
They're considered the police inside. Even the inmates will refer to them as the police because they pretty much are the police.
And then if there are any, altercations that happen, are there, that you know of, are there many altercations that you have experienced, and you can just say no or I'm going too far, that to mimic what's going on publicly, that will mimic inside the prison systems, that will affect the police?
Well, is the question, are there similar incidents or protests? that
Whichever,
are-
whichever one you're willing.
Well, institutions as a whole, across the country have issues of use of force issues. I'll just say use of force issues.
Mhm.
The Department of Corrections, before we were even created, had issues, and that was one of the reasons that we were created. So it does happen, but we're there to ensure that it doesn't happen, or that it's properly a use of force being used. So, and as far as protests, I haven't heard of any inmate protests that would mimic what's been going on the outside.
What do you think about it? I mean, I'm not going to be the one. I mean, I've known you now for 20 years. How old are you? Yep, I've known you now for 20 years.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
It is. So, how do you feel about what's happening right now? I mean, you have been, I'm not going to out your past career, but you have a wide,
It's okay.
you have a,
It's okay. I'm an open book.
but in terms of these types of things. So if you're willing to share that, but what's your perspective on what you see is happening right now, and how that feels inside for you?
Yeah, and I mean, I'll say what my past is. I worked with Cochran's office, and that was wonderful. And then I worked as a criminal defense attorney with the public defender's office, and then with the attorney general's office, doing civil prosecutions relating to licenses of teachers when they do bad stuff, going after their license, and other individuals holding licenses. So I've had the experience of working on the defense side in the criminal defense setting, excuse me, and then also on the prosecutorial side, dealing with civil cases. So I have my opinion. I have two things. One, I want to say, and I was mentioning it before, that I'm incredibly proud of this younger generation of millennials and Generation Z, because as much as I bad-mouthed you guys about social media and millennials this and millennials that, they've done an incredible job with the effort and just making people listen to some of the things that have been discussed for the last 100 years. And our generation, Courtney, as I was saying, we didn't accomplish what they've already accomplished in like a couple of months. And I don't know why. I mean, there's probably varying reasons why, but they've done an incredible job being out there and making people listen, and have made changes that are just amazing. So that's one thing. I have to tip my cap to them. Excuse me. But as far as the one of the major issues I see, and it's on, unfortunately, almost every other night, the police misconduct regarding us out in the streets. And one of the things I think people really need to focus on is changing the laws, because we get so caught up in, well, why aren't you prosecuting this officer? Or why aren't you arresting this officer for something? And the reality is, like a lot of things, we don't ask that second question, which is, or we don't do that second level of investigation. And the second level is because the laws will make it very difficult for that officer to be prosecuted. So if you're a prosecutor, you're going to be cautious about charging someone when you don't believe beyond a reasonable doubt, you can find them, have them found guilty.
Got it.
So that's the problem. And that's why I tell people like Ash and other people his age, look at the laws, because we need to address the laws of the Officers Act being looked at as what would another officer do.
Mm.
A lot of the other laws we have, it's what a reasonable person would do. It's called an objective standard. So instead of looking to see what you did, which is subjective, we look at what a objectively view would be of who, a reasonable person. Would a reasonable person in your shoes do the same thing? Very simple. With police misconduct, it's would another officer do what you did? And the problem with that is if you already have a group of people that you are questioning their integrity, you're questioning their honesty, you're questioning a lot of things about them. You then are comparing this police misconduct against that same group.
Mm-hmm.
That logically doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I was telling Tracy, it's like in our area, if they said, okay, the Bates House, you're in charge of policing and making sure we're all safe. And then my daughter goes out and breaks some kid's arm, throwing them down because, they did something that she thought was wrong. Okay, now you're going to say what we would do as a family, what we think is reasonable. Well, if I'm teaching her to do that kind of stuff, I'm going to say, yeah, well, that's reasonable. So it's to me, it's more the laws, because when you look at things, and we've seen many instances of, if you just look at it, you think, oh my God, how did that happen? I mean, you can go back to Rodney King. How did that happen? How can anyone say that that's appropriate? But if you look at the laws, that's how they end up winning if they do go to trial, because that juror is sitting there having to follow the law that we all as minorities want them to follow. When it's a minority defendant, we want them to follow the law. Reasonable doubt. Do you feel beyond a reasonable doubt that that person did what is said based on the jury instructions? Well, that's what happens when it's a white officer sitting there accused of misconduct, or a black officer, but any officer there sitting there accused of misconduct. So the jurors' hands are tied a lot of times, and the result is it's not a conviction. Or even before that, as I said, the prosecution won't even bring the case forward because they know likely what the outcome is going to be. So I just implore young people to look at the laws. And Trayvon Martin, stand your ground law. It's the laws that we have to look at and change before we can truly change the behavior, in my opinion.
That makes perfect sense.
Did growing up in LA change the perspective you had towards other people and towards yourself?
I think was beneficial, because fortunately here in LA, there's a diversity of people here. So you're able to, not just understand one particular culture's needs and wants and idiosyncrasies. You're able to mix and see others. So I think that's always beneficial. But I don't think there's not a perfect scenario, because if you're in a situation where there's perhaps only grew up around primarily Black people and only Black people, then maybe the impediments that you experience in a more diverse situation wouldn't be apparent. Just a simple analogy is like if you go to an all-girls school. If you go to an all-boys school or an all-girls school, you may not be caught up in trying to look good for the other sex, or doing this and doing all these things to impress the other person. You're just focusing on doing what you can do to be the best person you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if you grow up in a predominantly same culture neighborhood, you theoretically could just be dealing with just what makes you be the best person you can be.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's a perfect scenario. I think both have their pros and cons. But I think I'm glad I was able to grow up in a diverse area, because I think in the long run, as long as you are in an environment, within that environment, that allows you to kind of be the person you can and should be, you'll be able to get the best of both worlds. But I would like to think that had I grown up in another less diverse area, you know, I could still succeed as well. If that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does very much so.
I mean, it's been fascinating, just different responses as we've gone through this process. And there have been some people that we have interviewed that have grown up in just predominantly Black environments, and some of them have felt very enveloped and very,
Right.
secure in that area. And then some of them have also expressed in the same respect that they felt they seem to have a greater divide with others that
Yeah.
they couldn't quite, I think, resolve.
Yeah.
So,
And I think a lot of it may be who you are personally.
right.
If you are someone that is seeking more and more, you may be hitting that lid, and you want more.
Right.
But you may be someone that you are perfectly fine with this environment, and that's great too. There's no one way for it. So I think both environments can help someone be, who they're supposed to be.
with your daughters in this time, and I've been every day I come up with a different term. So, outside of the pandemic,
What's the term today?
I think today is, we're going to call it social change. That's
Okay.
during this time of social change. Have you felt that? And I've felt the exact same way you have. The part of my partial issues that I've had with your generation about not being able, and I'm going to, make it a little more visceral, not being able to sort of suck it up. Like, why can't you
Right.
just suck it up? But their inability to suck it up, their uncomfortability, has been exactly, to me, a key component in this, chemical change,
Right.
reaction. So with that, as you are informing your girls on this day to day, and you all are at home and you're having these conversations, has the conversation changed for you, considering what you've seen in the last few weeks?
Well, it's changed in that I'm less annoyed by what they're saying when they are the the what people would call radicals. I'm inspired by it now, because it's not just talk, it's actually getting some stuff done. So that's a good thing. But before, because of course, except for Ash, people their age think they know everything. So it's like I sit there and I'll throw in my little comments, knowing, I'm not going to change their mind. But that's cool to see that fire and that passion, because that's what took them out there in droves in the street protesting. I mean, Alexa and Raina went out near the Grove the day they did all that looting. It started at Pan Pacific Park, and they were out there because I told them, I don't want you guys out there because of the pandemic and everything. She said, well, we're going to have our masks on, and we're just going to give out some waters to people that are out there. So they bought a bunch of water, and that was it. And then it sprang into a bigger event that, kind of went south a little bit. But the fact that they were out there protesting, I was like, yeah, that's good. That's good. And each generation, you hope, like you said, our generation was more of a suck it up attitude, I think, and even more so by our parents. So you do kind of want them to do that. I just want them to, like I tell them, you first need to see the problem. if you're going to fix the problem, you first have to acknowledge what the problem is. Sometimes we don't want to do that, but see it for what it is and then act accordingly. It's not always what we want it to be now, it's what it actually is. And, you know, Courtney, you know, you've run across some things, I'm sure, that Ash hasn't and hopefully will not, but you have to see the racism for what it is, and then attack it. So that's what I try to get them to do, because a lot of times I hear what should be, and I'm like, yeah, that is correct. That's how it should be. But how is it now? Now let's get it to that point, but we first have to deal with what it is now. We can't get mad at people because of what they're doing now. Let's enlighten them and get them to the other point. So again, they're doing a great job. I'm really impressed with that whole generation, and I'm looking forward to some great things to come.
In these conversations that you're having with them, do you find yourself noticing that they were told to you, or are these new conversations?
What do you mean that they were told to me?
The things that you're trying to instill into your children.
Oh, were they told to me by my parents?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are just the general morals and values that you were brought up with. You know, treating other people like you'd want to be treated. It's something I used to tell them when, you know, you're talking to them about doing the right thing in school or not doing drugs or whatever it is. I said, you know, the right thing to do. I mean, that inner voice, it's coming from somewhere. If you're religious, and it's God. If you're spiritual, it's from some other place. But you know the right thing to do. And I said, if you do the right thing and something bad happens after that, then so be it. You did the right thing. You can't control a consequence that is bad because you did the right thing. I said, now, if you do the wrong thing and there's a bad consequence, that's all on you.
Right.
So, you know, and those are things that were instilled in me. Just do the right thing. So that's what I try to do with them and tried to do with them. And I think it's playing out. I think the fruit is there, and that, you know, when they're going to these protests and whatnot, they're doing the right thing. So it's inspiring for me as well to see what they're doing.
And what would you hope that they teach their children? What would you hope that your grandchildren?
I would hope that they would continue what I was taught and what I taught them, and each generation gets more involved in loving their fellow man or woman, and just keep doing the right thing, and you know, and just be a great parent. You know, be a great parent. I think that's what's important, and we all want our kids to do just a little bit more than we did. So I'd want them to, you know, whatever they've done, try to inspire their kids to do a little bit more.
You know, Eric, one of the things I would love to know is, you know, even you could sit here and interview me and talk about my own evolution. And one of the things is what's been so beautiful with many of the relationships that I've had is been able to see your friends, see this evolution that's happened, you know, on that day before your father, and see you as you move through and
right.
See, well, here I am, I got a girl. Oh, here I am, I got two girls. You know, here I am, I'm no longer the single, you know, attorney doing this, and now I am a father and I'm a husband. And one of the things that, and then even in your line of work and the emotional effect of the line of work that you've participated in. And one of the things that I have noticed and that I have really loved about you is watching you grow and watching you bring more of what is inside of you out and share it in your Eric way, you know, and I say,
Oh, thank you.
and that's beautiful because I believe a lot of men have not done that, or they haven't had the opportunity to do that.
Yeah.
And so with that, I would love to know, what is it about yourself now today that you love and respect more than about who you were 10 years ago?
That's a good question. That's a good question. I think, again, going back to my upbringing, you know, my mom was very religious, and so I always was taught to do the right thing, and I was also taught. It's funny because I have this. My mom was a school teacher, so I was around women a lot. So even like during the summers when they're going and fixing up their rooms, you know, way back when they did that, before the summer started, I was around women a lot. I was actually in my godmother's class for sixth grade because they taught at the same school. So that was funny. But I remember whenever I would be with the two of them, they would instill in me the little things like go and open the door for your mom, or you know, doing the gentlemanly kind of things that you would want people to do. So that's been instilled in me from way back. So having girls now, it's I've always been this, you know, I guess girl dad is the new hashtag, but I've always been a girl dad. I've always been someone who really believed in empowering women, because it's just wonderful to see them do things and do things as equally as we can do. And that was even before having girls. So I think, you know, I kind of wonder why I didn't have any boys. Maybe that's why. Maybe I was supposed to have two girls, because I really enjoy seeing them being able to do what they really, really can do. So I don't know so much if it's what am I surprised, or what my view would be of me being different now than before. I don't know if it's really different. It's just maybe being able to use what I was taught and raised on in a scenario now, involving the girls. You know, in my single days, I was, you know, I like to think I was always one of those respectful guys who, you know, didn't take women for granted and all that. So I don't think I changed too much. I think it's more of I'm able to express now what I was being prepared for, maybe even, and you know, as, in my younger days, and to let them know, them being my girls, let them know that they are just as important as anyone else. That they are equal. That they do have a right to stand up and say what's on their mind. So I think it's more of just doing more of what I may have been destined to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about you?
When you think of everything that a Black man or an African American man is supposed to be, what values do you attribute to that image?
First, that's one thing we have to figure out. Are we going to be called Black or African American? But that's a whole other topic. You know, we all use them interchangeably. Sometimes even in articles, it's just interesting to me. They'll start out with African American, then I'll go to Black. But anyway, what values do I attribute? I'm sorry, I forgot the question now, Ash. What values do I attribute to?
Like what do you envision as your
Essence?
of a Black man? Like in your
It's
mind?
tough. It's tough. I'm going to tell you. It's, you know, we joke around. My friends and I joke around, and we say it ain't easy being Black, as I'm sure you guys know. I've been, you know, law school. Out of 300 law students, there were only 3 of us that were Black. That's, you know, that's about 1%.
Right.
There are many situations early on, and still to some degree now, where I'm the only Black person in the room of many. I remember being in a courtroom once, and we went back and talked to the judge, because we'll have discussions about plea deals regarding your clients, when I was doing criminal defense. And I was in Fontana, which is called Fontucky in California. So we go back into the judge's chamber. It's me and the DA and the judge, and we're talking about the case. And the judge just starts into this racial joke, and they're just laughing. And then oh, no offense, Mr. Bates. And I'm thinking, are you crazy? How can you say that joke with me sitting here?
Right.
So it is a continuing issue, and you don't get over it. You just deal with it. And I pray for a day when you don't have to deal with it. And you don't have to it doesn't even exist. It's not a matter of you coping. It's a matter of it not even existing. One day, perhaps one day, I don't know how soon, but it's difficult. I mean, we do have to work twice as hard to get the same acknowledgement. But you know what? To me, it makes you realize you can do that. It shows you who you really are. It shows that you can overcome and triumph, maybe, probably even more so than others, because you do it. Like Black women. How many Black women have to take care of families because the father's not there? I mean, that's an amazing accomplishment. So we do what we have to do, and I think it shows how strong we are as a people. But I'm hoping, one day that we won't have to.
It's always the hope.
Yeah.
It's always the hope. But the profiling is real. I just want to say, I mean, just, being a Black male, profiling is real. I can't, let me think how many times I've been stopped. Maybe 6 or 7 times since being, 19, growing up in Culver City. I, asked to step out of the car, sit on the grass for no reason. Another time I was with my friend Ivory. Ivory. We were driving, and I had a convertible, and we get stopped by the police. And he takes my ID and he's running it, and I was like, wow, what happened? I mean, we weren't even speeding. And I said, oh, that's how it is in Culver City. And the partner officer was standing next to Ivory, and he says, oh yeah, that's right. Didn't you know that's what makes Culver City such a great place to live? So it's blatant. I mean, it's blatant. I'll tell you another one. My mom lives in a gated condo community. I dropped her off at the airport, and it's about 11:30 at night. There's a big median down the street. So I was driving because I had to drop something off at her house on my way home. And the police turn around at the median, make a U-turn. They see me put in a key card to open the gate. I go through. They ask the guard to open the gate for them. They stop me in the parking structure, take my ID, run it, come back and say, okay, have a nice day. Just, that's all. Black driving, let me check this out.
Yep.
So I have many of those. So anyway, that is real. And it's just a matter of, there's that fine line between acceptance to where you think you're not fighting anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you have to a certain degree, accept, otherwise you would go nuts. You can't, and I try to tell the girls this, you can't let that preoccupy your mind. The disadvantage they try to put us in, the inequity of it all. You cannot let that constantly be at the forefront of your mind, because it will drive you nuts.
Mm-hmm.
But still, you can't forget it to the point where you're willing to accept it. Mm-hmm. So that's why what's being done out here now, by these young people is just incredible, because they're willing to not accept it, but they're also not letting it drive who they are as a person. And I think that's really important. It's survival. It's a survival mechanism, but you have to have one. Otherwise, you don't want to just crawl in the corner in the fetal position and cry.
Mhm. I mean, and which you're describing are all these different layers of the mental health issues that affect, you
Right.
know,
Right.
whatever your constitution is, and whatever and however you've been prepared or not prepared for something that no one should be prepared for,
Right.
you know, has a direct correlation to everything. And
Yeah. And you know, and it's things that non-minority people don't even get. I mean, Trace and I were talking about this the other day. How many times do you think about being Black versus how many times you think white people think about being white? They never think about being white. But we think about being Black many times a day in the most subtle situations, such as if you're calling, let's say you're calling a hotel for something. You know, it's like, okay, do I want to let them know that I'm Black? Or, I mean, it's just things when you have to realize, do I want to take care of this over the phone as opposed to going there in person because they may treat me differently if they see who I am? Things like that we do a lot of times and don't even think and realize we're doing.
Right.
Mhm.
But we're actually dealing with the issue of, inequality and I'm not going to say the burden of being Black, but just the struggles sometimes of being Black. It's real. And, I'm glad that the mental health industry is actually acknowledging it and to some degree trying to deal with it, because it is stressful sometimes. It's not just stressful when someone, points their gun at you at a traffic stop, because I've had that done too. That's over nothing. That's stressful, but just the everyday things that you go through are stressful. Yeah.
And the decision of what, and to your point, the decision of what you're going to, not even, I won't say allow, because that sounds too permissive, but what you're going to allow to preoccupy you during the day.
Right. Right.
It's almost, I mean, and it is in so many respects, it's almost like, what kind of soldier are you?
Right.
Are you the soldier that, just goes in and eliminates? Are you the soldier that's trying to evaluate what's going on in the brush? Are you the soldier able to sit there and say, no, I'm going to protect this child and this wife, or this woman out there in the middle of the town? Or are you the soldier that's just going to come in shooting? Or are you the soldier that just loses it? The mind, and the mind never goes back. One of the things that was also for me personally a big inspiration of wanting to do this podcast outside of my own connection, of course, with my son, is that I know a plethora of extremely, what word would I say, accomplished Black men who are dead. They're gone. And we could say that they died, like we could say that they were supposed to die prematurely or whatever. But I know too many Black men who I believe decided that they were going to just keep going, and they were going to maximize everything that they could, for their families and academically and financially, but that they left prematurely. And I believe that part of that, and it's just my own thing, is that part of that is that they decided that they were going to win. But as that they were in that battle, there's so much stacking up as well in that they decided, or that they had to take on top of already, the needs that are, or the determination or the resolution. But that is one of the things that was a big inspiration for me for wanting to do this podcast, is wanting to, one, make sure that as there are these socioeconomic disparities among certain Black people, and that it gets illuminated that the same thoughts are in everybody's brain. But at the same time, as you are striving to win, and you're striving to win in a scenario that is like a war, that you are taking different hits with each
Mhm.
day that you're walking along.
Absolutely. I mean, just think, it pops into my head every now and then. Just think of the greater accomplishments we could have if we didn't have to deal with the everyday crap like that.
Right.
I mean, if you, let's say 20% of your day you're dealing with inequity situations, just think what you could be doing if you didn't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff.
Correct.
I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, let alone your personal benefit, your mental health and physical benefit, but just think of the idea you may have for something that you never get a chance to work on because you're stressed out because somebody made a comment about you at work or something, or in the street or something. It just takes you out of that frame of mind, that developmental frame of mind, and it's back into that preservation kind of frame of mind, like just protecting who you are, and so multiply that by, millions of people. It's sad. It's really sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, what took you so long to do this? This is great. This is a great idea. This is really great. Because as you said, Courtney, we all have so many different points of view on the same issues. Everyone deals with things differently. So it's I think it's wonderful to hear how people deal with things differently, from different socioeconomic positions, professional situations, just personal. I mean, just from so many different aspects. So this is wonderful. So I'm gonna have to check out some of the other speakers you had on here.
Oh, good. Good.
Anything for me? Anything else for me?
No. You feel like
Okay. Well, if you have any other questions, feel free. I'm always here for you guys.
Thank you.
So we have one thing that we ask every guest to do before they exit that screen. And
Uh-oh. Okay, go ahead.
and that is to lean into, or you don't have to lean into, but that is to say into the camera and into your own eyes, I love myself.
Okay. Eric, I love myself.
Yes.
I love you guys too.
We love you,
We love you
Eric.
too so much.
All right. Okay, you guys take care.
I
All
love
right.
myself.
All right, we're going to exit. Thank you so much for another episode of Coming into Grace, presented by Love Myself Fix, knowing who we are and loving us for it. See you next time.